You gotta be detailed, precise, and informed.
That's DPI.
Welcome back, everybody, to That's DPI. I'm Zach, and that is Tyler over there, and we have a great episode for you guys with some preseason and training camp recaps, some underrated fantasy football players that you should target in your drafts in these coming weeks, a recap of the Hall of Fame game, and then we want to talk about the Bills Stadium catastrophe after their first home preseason game, as well as maybe provide an update on a previous video about Terrion Arnold. So that's our agenda today, but Tyler wanted to jump straight in to preseason game recaps. Both of our teams played a preseason game over the last few days. And so let's start with you. You were at that game, and you got a chance to hopefully see some of the in-game action. Who are some standouts from those preseason games that you thought, could be good for the Chiefs, good for fantasy, just good in general, or stood out in a bad way?
So there are three players that stood out in a positive way to me, and this is pretty consistent with what we saw at training camp. First is Cyrus Allen. Cyrus Allen has been the training camp favorite. He's been getting great targets. He's been having great catches, and he seemed to do really good. I can't remember the exact stat line he had, but I do know that he got a good amount of catches. He looked solid. He got 2 catches.
Yep, and one of them was pretty acrobatic.
Yes, that's the highlight that I've been seeing all over. I didn't get to watch too much of the game with my job at Arrowhead, to be honest, so a lot of my analysis is based on what other people are saying and Twitter and some videos. So Cyrus Allen has absolutely been the camp favorite. We saw that at training camp. And he kind of translated that. In addition, there is rookie running back Emmett Johnson. He's my second guy that did well. Johnson, I believe, got a touchdown in the game.
He did.
And the fans at that one, I was one of the few plays that I did get to watch. He's had a solid training camp, very quiet. He's not going to become the starting running back this year by any means at all. But he's definitely looking to make the roster. He's going to make the roster. I can see him getting in on special teams, potentially being a really good third down back, perhaps just that second string running back behind Brashard Smith also, and of course Kenneth Walker. I can see Smith and Johnson making a really good RB2 battle. And the third one that I thought looked good was R. Mason Thomas. He was another one that people were wanting to watch. He was our second-round draft pick. Some people were mocking him in the first round. I did mock him to the Chiefs, so I was correct on the drafting of R. Mason Thomas, the rookie out of Oklahoma. He had a pretty solid game as well, especially with Peter Woods not looking like he had a great game. He possibly concerned me, so if we can hit with R. Mason Thomas, it might make a bust of Peter Woods, which it's way too early to call him a bust by any means. So let me just point that out too. But if it ends up not panning out well, it looks like R. Mason Thomas could be that other guy to bring in more pass rush, because that's goodness. The Chiefs need a better pass rush.
Well,
Jones and Karlaftis do solid, but that's it.
Right. I mean, you were a notable Peter Woods disappointed. Peter Woods hater, maybe he's a little strong. Maybe a Peter Woods disliker on draft night.
Yeah. And the face I'm kind of making now was my face on draft night. Just like, not who I would have picked. But I hope I hope he does do well.
It seems like he had a quieter day in the preseason, but he has been standing out in training camp. So that is the good news. The bad news is he did not make an impact, or at least as much of an impact as R. Mason Thomas, who I know led the Chiefs in pressures with 3 per Pro Football Focus. I also concur with you on Cyrus Allen and Emmett Johnson. I also wanted to bring up Garrett Nussmeier, who I thought will be the QB2. I feel like he has been more impressive than Justin Fields in camp. I feel like he's been more accurate. He certainly looks like a pro. The Chiefs drafted him for a reason. So I think he's making a legitimate stand to that QB2 role. and he made some pretty off-balance throws that looked really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly a guy to watch in the next preseason game. But
The good thing with Fields is that he did have a solid preseason game. He went 4 for 4, averaging 10 yards per throw. Um, it's hard to get a gauge on that, but in his 4 passes, he did connect on all of them. Garrett Nussmeier went 13 for 19 for 98 yards, QBR or QB rating of 80. I felt like he has been looking very solid in camp, but the worst quarterback that I have ever seen is Chris Adolcum. That
yeah,
was horrible. He'll be on the practice squad again, which we knew going into it.
yeah, that's why they drafted Oladokin or whatever, however you pronounce his name,
Mm-hmm.
because he got a chance to actually start as the QB1 in the tail end of last year, and the Chiefs' offense never looked more dysfunctional in my lifetime. Truly, it was worse than some of the other, like the Tyler Palcos of the world. Like, it was that bad. I mean, losing
Yeah,
to
it
last
was
year's
rough.
Tennessee Titans team by the margin that they did, the Chiefs were completely lost. But I was very impressed. So was Pro Football Focus with Nussmeier. They gave him a 73.9 grade with a 72 passing grade. That's very good. One of the better rookie quarterback grades of the preseason. So I think that there's only room for him to grow. I wonder what they gave Fields. I'm going to do some live research because I didn't have him prepared. But I am curious. He didn't get too much playing time, though, did he?
Yeah, I mean, again, only four passing attempts. So PFF, it might be one of those skewed. It might be like when the punter throws a fake pass and ends up with like 118 QBR off one throw kind of thing.
Yeah, and yeah, he for what it's worth, he got a lower grade, but I don't think that you can really do much with that. I mean, his average depth of target was only 5 yards, which is probably why he got the low grade. He made no big time throws or did nothing impressive. He was just painfully average, is what PFF is saying, which I would tend to agree with. If you complete 4 passes for 41 yards, I would say that's a pretty average performance.
Mm-hmm. I do think that Justin Fields and Garrett Nussmeier are really going to compete heavily in the second preseason game. I think I can see each of them taking like almost a full half.
Yeah, I would hope that happens for sure, because I don't think that Andy Reid is going to risk injury of Mahomes at all in the preseason. I don't think he does now.
No, not at all.
Any more in general training camp observations that you've noticed from Kansas City? I know that it was a big point of contention that Jaden Hicks was not a starting safety, but he seemed like the best player on defense out there in the preseason game. Anything else about the Chiefs as training camp closes to the public?
Secondary does concern me still. Now, Mansour Delane, I believe, is still wearing a non-contact injury. I can see Mansour Delane not playing at all in the preseason game either, and I think he's going to be cornerback 1 going into week 1. But having a rookie at cornerback 1, I don't have much confidence in the secondary. Once again, I am nervous about the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, you've also seen some clips of Mansour Delane, looking hit or miss, and that's expected as a rookie, but he's expected to be the starting outside corner. And, you need somebody to step up. You need a veteran like L'Jarius Sneed to step up. You need Noel Williams, he's a veteran, but without a lot of experience to step up. Or you would need that rookie. So someone has to show flashes. And so far, I haven't really seen much of that. I not consistently, at least. I've seen a few plays made here or there, but certainly nothing that makes me go, this guy's a cornerstone of the secondary. Certainly not at safety. Aloy Gilman and Jaden Hicks and all those guys aren't particularly impressive either.
Mm-hmm.
I think Shamari Connor's another guy that's in the rotation for that starting job.
Yeah, and even then, it's. I think he's mid at best.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, secondary is definitely going to be our weak spot. If we can get a better pass rush with Peter Woods and R. Mason Thomas to complement Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, might make things interesting. But if not, Chiefs are in for a rough year on defense again.
Yeah, no, 100%. Definitely a concern to keep an eye on for the rest of the preseason. But if you don't have too much else on the Chiefs, we can switch to Detroit and talk about their.
Yeah, how are they doing?
I was very impressed with the way that the Detroit second team played against Joe Burrow in the full ones against the Cincinnati Bengals. Ahmed Hassanin, 6th-round pick last year from Boise State, first Egyptian-born NFL player to be drafted in the NFL, on his very first snap of this year's preseason, sacked Joe Burrow. And, it was amazing to see. It was a little stunt play. And it was his first career sack. He was pretty pumped about it because he had all of last year's taken from him with a pectoral injury. I was really excited for him last year, and now he looks to be a genuine, legitimate 6th-round contributor at edge rush. He recorded 2 sacks, including a sack fumble later in the game. So very impressive stuff from Ahmed Hassanin. He garnered a 90 defensive grade from PFF on 30 snaps, which
nice.
means you can't play that much better if you're Ahmed Hassanin. So great work from him. We also saw Roger McCreary, who the Rams traded for last year at cornerback. He's probably going to be the starting nickel, step up in a big way, earn an 87 PFF grade on 40 snaps. He looked like a veteran corner covering guys in the preseason, which is exactly what you want to see. You want to see your veterans show that they still belong. And on top of that, there was another guy that I thought did very well. Another pass rusher. This is a UDFA this year, Eric O'Neill, who you'll get a kick out of this, Tyler, beat Orlando Brown Jr. around the edge and laid a monster quarterback hit on Joe Burrow that forced an incompletion. He was second on the
shocker that Orlando Brown did that.
Yeah, right. I'm sure that you're just flabbergasted as a former fan of former left tackle for the Chiefs, Orlando Brown Jr.
Mm-hmm.
But he was tied for 3rd on the team with pressures, and of course got that awesome QB hit on Joe Burrow, which I'm sure is a highlight for any UDFA to find a way to hit one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL on a starting NFL left tackle.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those guys impressed me.
I mean, that's great for those guys.
Yeah, pass rush impressed me as a whole. Lions got a ton of pressures. Ahmed Hassanin also got 5 total pressures in those 21 pass rushing snaps, meaning that, essentially 1/4 of the time he was rushing, he was getting pressure on the quarterback, which is awesome. Other guys that impressed me were I thought that Nick Whiteside did really well. He's in the running for a corner spot on this roster, and he was slated to be the last guy on that depth chart, maybe on the roster bubble, probably a cut candidate. And he has been unbelievably impressive in training camp, just a standout player. Lions have been banged up a little bit at corner in training camp, and he has just remained healthy and continued to just dominate everybody he's played against, which is huge for the Lions because they need a corner to step up with the absence of Terrion Arnold. And I thought that he made the secondary play of the day where he was beat initially off the line, but used his great length and his long speed to catch up to the receiver and break it up in the air, record the only pass breakup for the Lions that day, or one of them. Nick Whiteside earned the 2nd highest coverage grade for any secondary player for the Lions for PFF, and it's for good reason. He looked very stout in coverage, and I think he went from a guy who wasn't going to make the roster to a guy that I think you cannot write him off the roster at this point. He to me should be a lock.
I was gonna say, I mean, the highlight reels from the Lions game, it looked solid. If you guys are clicking even on the secondary against starting teams, I think Detroit's going to be a very dangerous team this year, just in general.
Definitely. And then moving to the offense, we got some linemen. Our first-round rookie, Blake Miller, played. Fun fact about Blake Miller, he was the highest-graded rookie offensive tackle per PFF for the first round of preseason games, which is a great sign because there's a lot of talented guys on that list. Monroe, Freeling, all these other folks that could have been taken by the Lions, but Blake Miller's the guy the Lions wanted. They got him, and he's already looking like a guy who only missed one practice in college and started for 4 years, which he's exactly the kind of stable presence. I don't think we need Hall of Fame play from him right away, and maybe his criticism was in the draft process was the ceiling may not be the highest. I don't think the Lions need the highest ceiling. I just think they'll take the high floor with great potential. That's exactly what he showed in the first preseason game. So that is a comforting thought as well, I'm sure, for Jared Goff. But it wasn't all positives. Ennis Rakestraw, second round pick in 2024 out of Missouri, earned a 29 PFF grade. And on top of that, he attempted a awkward tackle with his shoulder and left the game with an injury. Now, the good news is the injury is not serious. It was a contusion, so he was able to return to practice in a few days. The bad news is that 29 grade, I think he was targeted 5 times and allowed four receptions. And before you say, oh, they were playing the ones, wasn't it Jamar Chase? It was not Jamar Chase. It was different guys, some of the reserves. And so certainly a concerning game for him. Now, there is a silver lining for Ennis Rakestraw. The Lions held a full team scrimmage in the evening 2 days ago, and Rakestraw recorded 3 pass breakups and an interception and 2 tackles for loss. So that is his best practice as a Lion, because he's not practiced very well since being drafted. He's been oft injured, but he put on 15 pounds in the offseason, and it certainly showed in this. And maybe he's finally turning the corner, but he was definitely a standout in a negative way in the preseason game. So I want to see him step up. I'm always rooting for him, but 29 PFF grade is pretty brutal.
Yeah, and he's definitely going to be more on, I don't want to say the hot seat yet, but he's definitely going to have an hourglass on him or a spyglass on him in this next preseason game, and that'll be your determination as to whether was that one practice a fluke or has he in fact kind of figured it out, has he settled in, and is he ready now?
Definitely. I mean, you want to see him perform in a game because he's only played in 3 preseason games, and ahead of his first slated start in the NFL, he tore his hamstring, and he has not played a regular season game since. He lost both 2024 and 2025 full season to injury. So I just want to see him perform well in a game before the Lions can get comfortable rotating him in with that starting secondary. He was drafted in the second round. They clearly like him, but time is running out for a second round draft pick that's never started a game.
Before we get into some fantasy football stuff, I do want to talk about the Hall of Fame game real quick. Carson Beck, the only person to throw the last pass of a college football season and then immediately potentially throw the first pass of an NFL season. He had actually a bit of a better day than fans were expecting. He threw 15 for 19 for 188 yards and a touchdown. His rating was 125. Obviously, it's preseason, and obviously he's a rookie, but does he have potential to compete for the starting job at some point this season against Jacoby Brissett?
I mean, why not, right? I don't think the Cardinals have any hope in winning the NFC West. It's the best division. It's the most top-heavy division in football with the Rams in Seattle, the defending Super Bowl champs. So why not? I guess the reason being you don't want to rush a rookie out and stunt his development by allowing him to play for a terrible team. So maybe that's the reason why they would potentially keep him behind Jacoby Brissett. But if he's genuinely the better option, I would want him to get those live reps.
See, and my thing is you kind of got a little bit into what I'm going to say. I don't think he should start at all this year. I think, as you had said, this is the best division in football because there are 3 teams that are really good and 1 team that is really bad, and his team is really bad. They do not have a shot for the division this year, and frankly, I don't think they have a shot for the playoffs this year. Let him sit. Don't rush the development. Let him sit. Maybe get him another weapon, and then let him go next year. That's kind of my thinking with Carson Beck. I think he could be good, but I don't think he should start this year.
So
he might be better though.
Here's my issue with that approach. I think that it worked with Mahomes, but when you have a guy that is older than Anthony Richardson right now, He is older than Anthony
I forgot
Richardson.
he's that old.
He is
I do forget
25
that.
years old. So
I do forget
how
that.
much time are you willing to invest in this quarterback and letting him sit? He'll be 26 next year. I think that mature guys like this have the opportunity to play, and he certainly looked mature out there because of their age. So I think that at the very least, if Jacoby Brissett is terrible, put him in after a bye week, give him 2 weeks to prepare for the start, and then start him then. If you don't want to start him week 1, that's fine. But I think that he's going to be a far better option, especially because at this age, you need as much NFL reps as you can get, because before you know it, you're a 28-year-old quarterback backing up Mahomes in Kansas City, or whatever, backing up another real starter that got reps. So I just don't think that you have much time to waste with Carson Beck. But, I do think it should be a legitimate competition. And if they think that Carson Beck still has some stuff to learn, let him ride for a few weeks.
The only the only problem is the Cardinals bye week is week 14, but they do play the New York Jets the following week. So if the season's not going well and you want to see how he does, give him the final 3 games. Let him prepare, and then give him the final 3 games and see what they're really working with. Unless Brissett is just awful, and I think Brissett's going to be that mid-tier. I think he's going to get the job done, not make the playoffs, but get the job done, be fairly competitive.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad plan at all. I think that if you're going to be conservative with Beck, that's what you should do.
Okay. I just wanted to address that a little bit as
sure. And
the national champion quarterback
in the Hall of Fame game.
I don't not national champion, national runner-up. Sorry.
Yeah.
He was not the national champion.
But speaking of quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame game, I don't even think he was, the most impressive. I thought Haynes King looked awesome. And with his game-winning drive at the end and 0-second touchdown, the Georgia Tech quarterback, who, of course, these guys played in that classic 7 overtime bout between Tech and Georgia a few years ago. I do think that Haynes King has a lot more room to grow. He was completing a lot of easy passes, a lot of easy bootlegs, and showed some accuracy concerns. But I thought his ability to move the offense down the field in the final moments of the game and score a game-winning touchdown with 0 seconds left shows that he has at least the winning factor, which I think is an important intangible that some quarterbacks straight up don't possess, right? So certainly encouraging for Haynes King.
Yeah, he had a great game. I'm looking at it now, 21 for 34 for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then rushing, he had 39 yards and a touchdown. So, I mean, he played a great game. Now, obviously, he's not going to go start over Bryce Young, but I think the real story there is Kenny Pickett did not play that well, completing just over 50% of his passes. So I think Haynes King could be the very realistic number 2 quarterback in Carolina. And depending on how it goes, maybe he gets traded somewhere and gets his start somewhere else.
Yeah, it's certainly an encouraging play for both quarterbacks. Honestly, the quarterback play in the Hall of Fame game across the board was better than I thought. I know Kenny Pickett was like mid for a former first-round pick. Cannot believe the Steelers picked him in the first round. But I was impressed with the quarterback play there. But I think we can officially move on to some underrated fantasy football players that I want you guys to target in your upcoming drafts. Last year, when we did this segment, we actually kind of framed it as an overreaction. So if you want to go back and watch, I'm going to edit it in right now. However, I genuinely think that he has a chance to be like a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy this year. And he's currently going outside the top 10. To me, he's underrated. And that's Jackson Smith-Njigba. But if you want to go back and watch, I predicted last year that Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was going in the 3rd round, should be picked closer to the tail end of the first, early part of the second. I followed my own advice and made the fantasy playoffs because Jackson Smith-Njigba was truly that good last season. So I'm hoping to have another hit like that. And my first player that I hope to hit on is Parker Washington for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He looked very impressive down the stretch of last year. And I think at 24 years old, he's younger than Carson Beck. I think he's going to have a really good season as potentially the number one option for Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. Right now, he's going, according to Fantasy Pros, he's going at around picks 73 in PPR. So you can get him in the later rounds. I think compared to guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., he should be drafted over them. I really like Parker Washington. I'm curious, do you have the same thoughts on P-Wash?
I'm a little hesitant. Now, granted, I suck at fantasy football, so if I'm hesitant, don't follow my advice. But my concern is down the stretch, he did get a lot of fantasy numbers, but he didn't get a lot of receptions. In all of December and in January, his final 5 games, he only got he got less than 10 receptions in every single one of those games. His most was 7. What he did get in 3 of those last 5 games was a touchdown and more than 100 yards. So there's definitely potential for yards and touchdowns and big fantasy numbers, but his number or lack of receptions down the stretch kind of concerns me, to be perfectly honest.
I think that down the stretch, the receptions weren't the issue. I think throughout the season, they were the issue. Posting a lot of 1 and 2 reception games certainly wasn't encouraging. But I think what's more impressive is his targets, and shows that by the end of the season, he had earned his quarterback's trust. Here's week 16, 17, 18, and in the wild card round, his targets. He earned 10 targets in week 16, 10 in week 17, 9 in week 18, and 12 in the wild card round of the playoffs. So he was getting nearly double-digit targets in every single game, in every single one of the last 4 games of the season from Trevor Lawrence. Clearly was the trusted options when the game mattered most. He also posted career highs in yardage, receptions, reception percentage, and Pro Football Focus grade. His PFF offensive grade jumped from a 59 in 2024 to a 79 in 2025, showing that it wasn't just usage, it was actual improving of the skills that make you a good wide receiver that allowed him to blossom in the tail end of last year. And if in case you were curious, his receiving grade for those last couple of games was 89, 76, 85.
Okay.
We find his postseason grade 89. So he was dominating in those last 4 games.
And I will also say one of those games was against Denver's defense on the road. So having 145 yards and a touchdown off 10 targets is very good. Is a very good thing to note. He's not playing the Jets. He's playing the number 1 defense in football.
Sure. And I think one other thing that contributes to Parker Washington's success last year, or this year and last year, would be the phasing out of the Travis Hunter experiment at wide receiver. The Jacksonville Jaguars have come out and said that Travis Hunter will be playing a majority defense and maybe a little offense in sub packages. And they also said that when he does commit on offense, he will replace Brian Thomas Jr., who took a massive fall off after his rookie year. That was very impressive. So Parker Washington is no longer going to have his snaps poached by a cornerback, essentially, which makes me think that those 10 target games may not be a blip in his career. They may be a mainstay in the Parker Washington experience. That's my argument for him.
I'm with it. And he said he's averaging pick 73, which is going to be the early end of the 7th round in 10-man leagues, late into the late 5th round, give or take, for 12-man leagues. I think it's a fair spot. I wouldn't reach on him, but if he's there in those later rounds where you're starting to get your flex guy, I'd go for him.
Most certainly, especially if he's there in the 7th. That's a easy snag if he falls, if your league mates don't know what they're doing. But I have 2 wide receivers that I think are underrated, and you may call me biased for this, and that's totally okay.
Gonna be a Lions player.
I'm going to justify it for you, and maybe you'll see if this justification is worth it. So,
okay, who we got?
Jameson Williams is my number 2 underrated wide receiver. And you may think, Yeah, we pretty much know exactly who Jameson Williams is by this point in his career. He was in year 5. But here is my argument with Jameson Williams. I don't think that he's had a full season to really prove how big his potential is, because his first season in the NFL was taken by injury. His second season in the NFL was taken by suspension. His third season in the NFL was also taken by a minor suspension. And last year, his offensive coordinator got fired after 9 weeks, largely because Jameson Williams' usage was so concerning that it had the beat writers literally blowing their lids. I mean, in the first 6 weeks of the season, Jameson Williams had one game with more than 2 receptions. One game in the first 5 weeks. And then he was blanked in Tampa Bay, then came the bye and he was fired. And he posted way more productive fantasy points. He was double-digit points in all but 2 games down the stretch after the Week 8 bye, after they fired the offensive coordinator. So I think that was another season that got taken away by some extenuating circumstances that are not JMO's fault. So if he gets a full season with a competent offensive coordinator and no suspensions, I think he will be excellent. And by the way, Tyler, where do you think that Jameson Williams finished last year, even with all that crap that happened? What rank would you have him? Like wide receiver 1 was like JSN. Like, where would you put him in the wide receiver rankings?
Yes. So I've got his stats pulled up from last year. So I don't know the ranking, but I do see that even so, he's still got 1,100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess based on that would be 6.
Wide receiver 6. Okay, that's a little overzealous.
Yeah.
He was wide receiver 12 in PPR and wide receiver 10 in half PPR, which is still really good. I would put him as a wide receiver 1.
I only kind of guess 6 just because there's not a ton of 1,100-yard receivers. So that's kind of where that was. But
that's true. That's a good
only
point.
65 receptions. So, yeah, I do see that rank kind of coming down with only 65 receptions.
Right, and I think that's what hampers him. But if wide receiver 12 would put him as a wide receiver 1, technically, in 12-man leagues. Like if there are 12 starting wide receivers and you're a wide receiver 12, you are a starting wide receiver in a 12-man fantasy football format. And so I was able to snag Jameson Williams with pick 6 of the 5th round. And I think that if he falls into the 5th round,
that's good.
He should be an automatic pick as someone who has the potential to finish as a wide receiver 1. I mean, he finished over.
I like that. Yeah, especially 5th round pick for Jameson Williams. Absolutely take him. I would honestly probably snag him in like the 3rd or 4th round.
Yeah, and I think that's where he should go. But if he's there in the 5th, like I got him, he's great value. Value Town USA with Jameson Williams. I think that a top 10 wide receiver finish in fantasy is not out of the question at all for JMO and his speed. And the reason for that is I always kind of give some extenuating reason. I'm not just going to justify it based on fantasy stats. And the reason is I've been following Lions training camp very closely. And Jameson Williams said he was going to work on 2 things, his route running and his catching in his hands, because he said he had a lot of drops last year. Jameson Williams is not wrong last year. He had a 43 drop grade, according to PFF, and a 12% drop percentage. That's compared to a drop percentage of 3% in 2024. If he can get back towards the mean, he does not have to get back down to 3%. Just get back down to average. I think Jameson Williams will turn his 100 targets into close to 75 receptions. And if he gets 75 receptions, his 19 yards per catch is going to make that a 1,400-yard season. And that will certainly put him in the conversation for not only one of the best wide receiver 2s in the NFL, but one of the best wide receivers, period. Hot take. Jameson Williams has that potential with his game-breaking speed. And if he truly has improved on his hands and route running like he says he has, and like training camp has showed so far, do not sleep on Jameson Williams.
I got to ask the other question, too, and kind of more asking for the viewers here. If Jameson Williams is not even the wide receiver 1 on his own team of 32, why should I put him at the wide receiver 1 for my fantasy team?
Big playability. Explosives equal touchdowns, and touchdowns equal fantasy production. That's it.
Okay.
Amon-Ra St. Brown is excellent in fantasy because he's very consistent. But Amon-Ra St. Brown makes his money on receptions. Jameson Williams makes his money on essentially gaining 20 yards per reception. So if Amon-Ra St. Brown,
per reception is 3 points there.
exactly,
Essentially 3 points per reception. Okay.
And a lot of those big catches do result in touchdowns. So Jameson Williams has back-to-back 7 touchdown seasons. I think that Jameson Williams has the potential to finish in double-digit touchdowns just because of how explosive he is, And so that's the reason why is because nobody has bigger explosive play potential than J-Mo, in my opinion, in the 5th round.
Okay. Who you got for number 3? I think you've got 3 more now?
Yes, 3 more. And so we have a tight end coming up, and this guy had an unfortunate injury that took away his season, but man, was he on a roll. Tucker Kraft was the guy that I had pegged as someone who could have contended for tight end 2 because nobody was passing Trey McBride's ridiculous season last year. But Tucker Kraft, in the first 9 weeks of last year, had 2 tight end 1 finishes and was constantly getting 7+ targets for the Green Bay Packers. And he had a 24-point game, a 12-point game, a 16-point game, and a 33-point game before suffering a lower body injury. So Tucker Kraft is someone, and now the Green Bay Packers have lost Romeo Doubs, are trying to phase in a bunch more offensive pass catchers, whereas Tucker Kraft, I think his role is very solidified. He's only 25 years old, and he looks good in training camp. So, yeah, Kraft looks incredible.
I like this guy too, especially because he's getting consistent touchdowns. He didn't have one giant game because he got 3 touchdowns and then that's it. Of his games, there were only 3 times where he didn't receive a touchdown in those 2, 4, 6, 8 games. He got a touchdown, none, touchdown, 2 touchdowns, and then his injury.
Yeah. And I think another important thing with Tucker Kraft is a lot of times you'll see tight ends that have their snap counts in the 70% range, 80% range. Sometimes teams go 3 wide receivers or 4 wide receivers and leave the tight end off. Tucker Kraft had 1 game that was less than 89% of the snap share for his team. 1 game.
Wow.
And he was at 88% in that game. So he did not have a game below 88% snap share as a tight end, which means he's essentially on the field all of the time. So his potential for volume is there. He clearly is a touchdown magnet with only a few games without a touchdown, as you said. And I think that he also could be a yards after catch monster. He had 2 100-yard games in his 9 last year, a 124-yard game and a 143-yard game. What more do you want in a tight end? The guy scored touchdowns, he rakes in yards, and he plays every down. That is the guy that I think should not be going in the 7th round in a 12-man league. I got him at pick 706 in my 12-man league, which is nuts because if he has a fully healthy season, he's a top 5 tight end. And that should not be going in the 7th round.
And with that, I do feel like fantasy owners need to remember that that's going to come with a couple growing pains, because I'm looking at a loss in Cleveland where he had 2 receptions for under 30 yards. You're going to have games like that. But again, then you're also going to get 7 receptions for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he's going to be that fantasy winner that week.
Yeah, and I think that Tucker Kraft, according to Pro Football Focus, is someone who's improved every year he's been in the league. He started with a 67 receiving grade, went up to a 71, and recorded an 82.9 last year in 2025 pre-injury. Tucker Kraft is someone you should absolutely be taking a look at in your late 7th round, maybe even early 6th round. But yeah, I don't have much to say other than draft Tucker Kraft.
His reception numbers worried me at first, but then I saw his consistent touchdown use, and it kind of changed my outlook on it.
Yeah, and I feel like the receptions were an issue as well because the receiving room was kind of crowded last year. But the loss of slot receiver Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks kind of just push guys out that were taking a lot of that target share. I mean, they got targets last year. That's just more targets for Tucker Kraft as far as I'm concerned. Because I don't think that they're going to be able to feed Watson, Reed, and Golden every single time, especially with Tucker Kraft being healthy now. But moving on to my next player, this is a player you should be pretty dang familiar with. And if you're not, I'd be pretty disappointed. And that is Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker for the Chiefs. I think he's very underrated.
So for context, yes, I'm very familiar with Kenneth Walker. Where is he currently being rated? When you say underrated, I want to know where that baseline is.
So in my dynasty round, I got him with the 10th pick in the 3rd round. That's dynasty.
Okay.
But I reached on him pretty hard. I got him at the tail end of the 1st round in my 12-man redraft league because I am that confident in Kenneth Walker. But I think the tail end of the 2nd into the early 3rd is where he's going in redraft. Yeah. Overall, PPR, he's going 19th. So right around pick 20.
Is he good? Absolutely. I just don't think the Chiefs have a history of making their running back a great fantasy number outside of Kareem Hunt's rookie year. I'm hesitant with Chiefs players because one game he's going to get 50 points. The next 3 games he's going to get 2 points. Not saying I think
going to happen this year.
Not saying Kenneth Walker is going to get 2 points, but like just I don't like drafting Chiefs players because I think Andy Reid schemes around different players each game, and you never know when someone's going to be heavy in the game plan or not involved in the game plan. I think Kenneth Walker might be able to break the trend a little bit, but I am nervous. I'm not sure if I would reach for him.
So here's the thing with Kenneth Walker and why I think that trend is going to be bucked. There's actually 3 things. The first thing is in the Mahomes era, the Chiefs have never invested in a running back from free agency, ever. They've never invested in a free agent running back. They've drafted running backs, and when they drafted those running backs, they used them, i.e. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but he was actually not that good. Funny thing about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he sucked. So his investment doesn't matter because they tried to use him and he stunk. So I think that actually shows that the Chiefs do have the ability to feed a running back if they have investment in them. And the great thing about Kenneth Walker is he's a known quantity. We know he doesn't suck. He just won the Seahawks the Super Bowl and essentially got them through the playoffs with how good he was running the ball. And Kenneth Walker is only 25 years old. He has no carry competition. Brashard Smith is not going to take Kenneth Walker's carries. Emmett Johnson, the rookie, is not going to take his carries. Amari DeMercado is certainly not going to take his carries. So he's set to be a workhorse. So that's the second option. The Chiefs invested in him a lot. He's set to be a workhorse because the Chiefs running back depth is very weak behind him. And the third thing is in training camp, Tyler and I saw in install them loading up under center runs for Kenneth Walker, which is something we have never seen in the Andy Reid era. Their under center run percentage is like 33rd in the NFL. You could add another team below them. Like you could add the Lions with Jahmyr Gibbs and the Lions with David Montgomery, and then the Chiefs are 33rd. Like it's truly that bad in terms of, or not bad necessarily, but truly that low. And the fact that they are showing that off in training camp and proving to me that they are going to commit to actually using Kenneth Walker like he's supposed to be used solidifies to me that there are a few backfields in the NFL right now that are less crowded than the Chiefs. I think it's the Lions. I think it's the 49ers if McCaffrey's healthy. And I think it's the Chiefs. 3 total workhorse backs and probably Atlanta as well. So those 4 teams just have unquestioned starters that should never be taken off the field. And so Kenneth Walker's biggest issue with going that early is health. If he can stay healthy, it will be awesome. Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it's fair. And I'd kind of forgotten about the under center install because that's something that the Chiefs struggled with is short situations. I think Patrick Mahomes has also had a turnover problem in the red zone. So if he can get a running back that is capable of getting those short yardage first downs and plowing through that line, he might even be getting a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah.
I don't think I would draft him in the first round, though. I think 3rd round might be a solid pick. I would never draft him in the first round, though.
I think mid-second is the right place for him to go. But if he's there in the 3rd round, you should be taking him. Like when I saw him available in my 10-man dynasty at 310, that's essentially a 4th round pick. That's the last
Mhm.
pick of the third round. I swiped him up. That's too good of a value for a 25-year-old workhorse back. I overdrafted the crap out of him because I didn't want the guy behind me to take him. But Kenneth Walker, I got him in the 11th pick of the first round. So I didn't get him in the mid first. So probably second round, early to mid is my target for him. But he's a little underrated at this point. Maybe not crazily overrated. But the last guy I said, oh, he's a little underrated, take him in the second over the third, was JSN. So that's all I'm going to say. I do have one final
I'll give you that
player that I want to talk about, and it's a quarterback because you do need one of those in fantasy football. And he is New Orleans Saints quarterback Tyler Shuck. He was a rookie last year, coming into his first full start, full season starting, and he's going pretty late in drafts. Sometimes he's going undrafted. I really like Tyler Shuck. I thought he posted a really good PFF season. He has some rushing upside. He looked very accurate. He had a 67.6 completion percentage. And he showed a lot of promise. But I'm curious what you think on Tyler Shuck.
I will say, looking at his stats live makes me feel a lot more confident. He threw the ball all over the field the last few games that he had played. The problem is, I don't think we've seen him against a good defense. Looking at his stats, yeah, great yardage, 272, 308, 333, 259. Those are his yards thrown in his last 4 games. The problem is those defenses were Carolina, the Jets, the Titans, and the Falcons. So I think he's got great potential. I think at best I'd classify him as a high risk, high reward. We have not seen him against a good defense yet.
And that's fair. We truly haven't got a good time to evaluate him against a good defense, but I think he's got prototypical size. And I think what makes him fantasy viable is his rushing production. He was averaging around, 7 carries a game, and he was consistently getting, over 20 yards rushing, and he did notch 3 total rushing touchdowns in his couple of games played. So to me, that rushing upside plus, his ability to take care of the ball and pass the ball very well, coupled with the fact that he's going in the 14th round, means that you could have a potential steal at quarterback if you take him then, and don't have to waste an early pick on a guy like Matthew Stafford, who may have the same stats, or a guy like Jared Goff, who's going in the 10th or 11th round. You could get the same value from Shuck 3 rounds later and pick another running back or pick another receiver. That's the only reason he's here, is because I think you could get that kind of value from his rushing and passing production as other quarterbacks way later in the draft, maybe even undrafted.
I think going in, I'd be willing to draft him, but I don't think he should be the only quarterback on your roster. Again, I think it's high risk, high reward if you do that, but he's not someone that to me, he hasn't proven himself against a good defense. I'm willing to draft him in the 14th round for sure, but I'm not willing to take my only quarterback with him.
So here's the thing. With the Saints, they play in the worst division in football. So you're essentially getting 8 games against mid-teams all year. Then they play the Miami Dolphins. This year they play the Cleveland Browns, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Vegas Raiders. Like I think that's 10 bad games this year already. 11 bad games right off rip. And so not every game is against a good defense. And when you look at Shuck after the bye, he essentially, from week 13 to week 18, I understand the defenses were bad. He did not have a point total less than 17. If you get that consistency at the quarterback position, that is very valuable. Very valuable. That's a guy like Jared Goff level fantasy production. And he was a top 10 quarterback in fantasy last year. If you can get 17 every game, that's phenomenal. Super phenomenal.
So,
and,
I'm with that, but I still think that you need another quarterback, especially because as I'm looking at the schedule, his first 2 games are at Detroit and at Baltimore. I think just for those weeks alone, you need another quarterback.
So on Sleeper, both of those options are green matchups for the quarterback. Detroit, as much as I want to
Really?
believe in their defense, has given up a lot of points the last 3 seasons. And so they kind of need to prove to me that they're not going to do that again. So I wouldn't say that
Interesting.
Detroit's going to be an easy matchup, but I don't think they're going to be the 85 Bears. Baltimore is a dark green matchup because they have a lot of questions with a new head coach. They lost Mike McDonald to the Seahawks. They lost Harbaugh to the Giants. We don't know how good that Baltimore team defense is going to be. The reason Baltimore is so hard to beat is because they have a perennial MVP candidate throwing the ball and Derrick Henry running the ball. So Baltimore's hard, but not because they get after the quarterback and all that stuff. So I don't think that those matchups are very bad at all. It's a great time.
That's fair, I guess. High risk, high reward.
Certainly.
I am sticking with that.
Not high risk, high reward at all. The risk is very low. He's a 14th round pick, so he's a low risk, high reward guy.
You know what? That's fair, and especially with the Saints defense, because I did base my whole argument on we haven't seen him play a good defense, and then when you look at the Saints schedule, you still won't see him play a good defense.
Yeah, and I think the Saints defense is not very good, so they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. So Tyler Shough is going to have the opportunity to just continue to throw it all over the field. So that's a guy worth taking a flyer on. And you know what? If you can get a solid guy and make him a matchup play, sure. But spending a 14th round pick on Tyler Shough is very low risk for the potential for 17 points a game at quarterback, which is A-okay with me. I will take that for sure.
That's fair. That's fair.
Those are my 5 underrated fantasy players. Let me know down in the comments if there's anybody I missed. But I do think we have 2 minor updates before we end this episode. The first is about something we covered last week related to Terrion Arnold. And I might let Tyler take this one because he actually called it in our last episode by mentioning something called the Commissioner's Exempt List. And I think it's because Tyler has experience with players going on the exempt list. So I'll let him explain what that is again.
So Terrion Arnold has been placed on the Commissioner's Exempt List, which basically means that he's not suspended, but he's currently not active on rosters. He's not allowed to be active on rosters. This is what Tyreek Hill went through during his investigations. He was on the Commissioner's Exempt List. Don't think he ended up missing any games, but while he was being under investigation, he was on the exempt list. Terrion Arnold was picked up by, I believe it was what team was it that picked him up? It was the Seahawks that picked him up. He went on the Commissioner's Exempt List, which again means you're not allowed to be active. You're not suspended, but you're not allowed to be active. They immediately cut him, and then the Seahawks signed Trevin Diggs instead.
Right, and so the Seahawks actually never signed him. It was just reported that they were planning on signing him. So they didn't actually have to go forward with the formal cutting process. But your point still stands. He never joined the active roster, so they instead signed Diggs instead of Arnold because they're in desperate need of cornerback help. That's the reason they worked Arnold out in the first place. So, yeah, good call out, Tyler. You absolutely nailed it with your vast knowledge of the Commissioner Exempt List. Terrion Arnold did, in fact, land there as predicted. So he will not play for an NFL team this year.
At least it looks like the NFL is going to let the legal process take its course before they determine any disciplinary actions. But as these are pretty serious allegations, yeah, I would not expect him to play at all this year.
Yeah, and that's how it's being reported too. So I've seen fans on Twitter being like, wow, they got Diggs and Arnold. That's great for them. And I was like, well, I don't think some fans are informed on what the exempt list is. So that's just your update there. But then there's one final update that I will also pass to Tyler, and it's about the brand new stadium out in Buffalo, or rather Orchard Park, New York. I'm sorry, Buffalo fans. Please don't throw a table at me. It's Orchard Park, New York. It's where New Highmark Stadium is, and it has some slight problems with looking at the field, the main point of the stadium. Tyler, did you see that on Twitter?
I did see that. So I think it's overhyped, meaning I think the problems are being overhyped right now. I think there's about 1% of stadiums that are really bad seats. But I understand the argument that in a stadium this nice and this expensive, there should be 0% of seats that have a bad seat.
Yeah.
The ones that don't concern me are the ones where there's like a bar or where there's like the railing in place. I mean, like that's what you get with row one of the upper level is you're gonna have the railing like that. No matter where you're at, that's gonna be how it is. My concern is there's an image of the upper level where there's concrete structure covering a quarter of the field. That's where I don't know how the architecture got that to be the case. I'm not worried about the bars going through a viewing area. You have to. You do have safety regulations that you have to follow. But those seats I do get concerned with. My advice to Bills fans or any fan wanting to go check out the stadium is I'd recommend checking out view from your seats. I would also avoid the first 5 rows of the upper level. If you're gonna buy tickets in the upper level, shoot for those row 10 to 15 because then you've got a nice view. I'd go lower level or I would go 10 rows up in the upper level.
Yeah, and I did see the view obstructions, and luckily StubHub and other ticket websites have the ability to see the view from the seat that you buy first. So make sure if you're going to a game this season at New Highmark, you do that so you don't get stuck behind the concrete structure. But there's also another criticism, and it doesn't come from the fans. It comes from the Bills players. According to the New York Times, a player that did not want to be identified, he remains anonymous according to the Times, said, quote, "The field is ass right now." He said, but it is early. So it seems there could be some issues with how the grass is structured, which is not what me, a Detroit Lions fan, wants to hear, who's playing in the freaking opener of New Highmark Stadium, is dealing with a team that is injury prone. I do not want them to play on a trash field. So I really hope the Bills can get their sod corrected before the start of the regular season. That is what the preseason is for. But I really hope that issue is corrected. But that is in a New York Times article with The Athletic that a player on the Bills said the field is ass.
I believe that's the case. I also believe that they'll get it fixed, especially if it's natural grass. They'll figure it out. It's not turf that was like, oh, this was poorly installed. Grass you can fix. You can lay down different sod. You can patch if whatever the issue is. I don't know. I remember from the Super Bowl when it was really bad turf against the Chiefs and the Eagles, where the Chiefs had won. It was clear that it had been like overwatered, and like that's why it was slippery. So there's a lot of science behind it. I'm not in agriculture, so I don't know what the science behind it is, but there's a lot of science behind it. They'll figure out what the problem is, and I think it'll get fixed. I wouldn't be concerned about that going forward.
Right. Another Bills player said it was soft, but not in a good way. And James Cook said the field felt smooth. So there are mixed reports, and it is a natural Kentucky bluegrass field. So that does give me hope that it is not at least like the MetLife turf monster that literally eats players' ACLs alive. So I think that it's a fixable issue, especially with a few weeks left before their home opener in week 2 of the NFL. But that's about all we have for you guys, unless you have another thing related to the Bills Stadium. But
that's all I had. I can't wait to eventually go there and see it. But we've got a couple stadiums on the docket this year, but the Bills Stadium is not one of them.
No, we went to Buffalo last year in the early winter. We're going to stay warm this year and go to Atlanta at that time. But more that's DPI on location stuff coming soon. But until then, thank you guys for watching.
Appreciate you guys.